What happens when Peter Parker is forced to do battle with the primal force of impending death? Will this be the Scion to finally break his will and put an end to the Covenant? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 65 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue had left off, Spider-Man had defeated Calyx the Scion of Pain, only to end up running smack dab into his next battle against CYRA, the Scion of Impending Death. Now, right off the bat, as we have seen, CYRA is much different than the other Scions. Mainly, she doesn't put much faith in this contest or trying to honor her father CYRA. She thinks the whole thing is stupid, and that the whole Covenant concept was built on the back of huge egos. She's not even particularly mean or antagonistic to Spider-Man in the beginning, she just wants the fight to be over, and Spider-Man very clearly seems to like her more than the other Scions he's dealt with so far. Now, what exactly is her contest? What's the gimmick this time around? Well, it's probably the most simple game we've seen so far. CYRA says that all Spider-Man needs to do to win their confrontation is hold her orb. She doesn't exactly say how long, only that he'll lose if he ever puts it down. And that over the centuries, with her many different confrontations, CYRA has discovered that the greatest weapon of all to defeat an enemy is actually truth. But what truths does she choose to show Spider-Man? Well, the truth about how maybe everyone he knows and loves will end up dying one day. Starting, of course, with Aunt May, CYRA paints a terrifying picture of a future wherein a terrifying biological plague engineered by Nathaniel Essex grips the globe. Aunt May, being an older woman and being a cancer survivor, she was particularly affected by this sickness. The doctors tried everything they could to save her, but in the end they couldn't. In the end, May accepted she was a goner and even gave up her hospital bed to try and save someone else. In her final moments, though, she regretted that she never got to kiss Peter goodbye. Now, we've seen Aunt May die plenty of times before, but this is a particularly raw and relatable one, especially if anyone lost any family members during COVID. Spider-Man, though, stays resolute. He isn't particularly shook by this. He basically says to CYRA, "Oh, is this your plan to depress me into submission? Yeah, well, guess what, lady? My life is a sad movie. You're not gonna bum me out by bringing up the concept of death." Hell, technically, Aunt May has died before, and Spider-Man himself has died multiple times in this series alone. But it turns out this was really just an appetizer, and CYRA is just warming up when it comes to the visions of impending doom for those that Peter Parker knows and loves. Next up on the conga line of death, we have Mary Jane, who falls in battle against the Hobgoblin. CYRA says the worst thing about this death isn't simply that Mary Jane died young, but that she died so completely unfulfilled. She overcame so much in her life, came so far, escaped an abusive father, had children, had them cosmically taken away from her, loved and lost with Spider-Man for years, and yet in the end, none of it actually mattered. Another cool art flair about all these deaths too is in the background we can see a suited individual who is obviously Master Death, Philip Coulson, and in every scene he goes a little closer. Spider-Man continues to put on a strong face, and next up CYRA decides to go for several emotional blows in quick succession. J. Jonah Jameson dies of an aneurysm at his desk. His predatory news network replaces him within the week. Shay, Spider-Man's new girlfriend, lived a good life, went out of her way to try and help those in need at Ravencroft, and she's unceremoniously killed by a drunk driver one day. Randy Robertson, one of Peter's last few friends in the world, was protesting for the unhoused, only to be trampled in a riot, his spine cord being severed, and his last thoughts alive, wondering if any of this was worth it. Felicia Hardy falls to her death one day while on a heist, her money repurposed by the government to feed the prison industrial complex. Betty Brant dies at an old age, but is unfortunately racked with the horrifying feeling that once she leaves this mortal coil, her family will inevitably fall apart due to infighting without her. Hell, even Norman Osborn gets a little vignette too, died experimenting on himself, and despite being such an important person, both as a villain and a businessman, all of his great and terrible works are forgotten within a few hundred years, because that is the fate of all mortals, great and small. Their lives are ultimately pointless in the greater cosmic scheme. And it's right around here that Peter, and by extension the reader, begin to grasp what exactly it is the inevitability of death is going on about. It's not about Peter's own death, but the deaths of those most important to Spider-Man, and how despite being a hero, despite fighting for what's right, there's absolutely nothing he can do to help them. Even with his brand new amazing magical power and position as the champion, at the end of the day, people just simply die. Ultimately, though, the thing that does shake Spider-Man is the next set of deaths, as we see Spider-Boy, Miles Morales, and Gwen Stacy Ghost Spider all dead at the hands of some mystery villain in some mega event in the far future. This actually does shake Spider-Man Spider-Man because as far as he's concerned, they were children. They didn't deserve to die such horrible fates, to be forgotten and cut down in their prime just because they dared to follow in Peter's footsteps as a Spider-Person. Funny enough, though, Spider-Man doesn't actually direct his rage in this situation to CYRA. Instead, he decides to turn it on Phil Coulson, Master Death. Phil is apologetic, but ultimately he tries to make Spider-Man understand that this is his job now. Death is a natural part of life, but sadly it is also incredibly random and unfair. No one knows when their time will come, only that it will come eventually. And that doing this kind of work has also managed to weigh heavily on Coulson himself. Again, he hasn't actually been Master Death for that long. CYRA really twists the knife too by delivering probably one of the coldest, most nihilistic speeches I've read in a comic in a very long time.
Everyone dies, everyone is forgotten, legacy ends, every great work is lost, you came from nothing, you return to nothing, life is nothing, this is why you fight in defense of ephemeral whispers who were dead the instant they were born.
Now, as cold and cruel as CYRA actually seems, she ends up surprising me too, as while Spider-Man is dealing with all these visions of impending death, outside Calyx decides to try and use this opportunity to cheat, attacking Spider-Man while he can't defend himself. And again, while it's a little vague here in the story, I think the idea is he sees his reflection in CYRA's orb, only for CYRA to attack him from behind. Again, she does have a weird, twisted sense of honor at the end of the day. Now, how exactly does Spider-Man win this competition? Well, as we discover, the orb just simply disappeared in his hand after forcing him to watch thousands upon thousands of deaths. The battle may be won, but the scars left behind from this encounter are going to be felt by Peter for a long time to come. In fact, later on, when the ghost of Stephen Strange appears to Spider-Man and tells him he needs to step up his game, in order to defeat the last 3 Scions, Peter tells him that he's done. He doesn't want to be a champion anymore. He doesn't want to do any of this anymore. CYRA might not have won the battle against Spider-Man, Champion of Magic, but she might very well have won the war for the Scions by getting Spider-Man to doubt himself, and to doubt one of his most core principles as a hero, that every life matters. And it's on that very dour note right there the comic comes to a close. So that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 65, everybody, and I gotta say, this was exactly the cure for what was ailing me in the whole 8 Deaths of Spider-Man series. Again, up until now, I've been saying that this has been fine, this has been workman, but it hasn't been particularly interesting. This issue, though, I actually found to be quite interesting. How does Spider-Man, Champion of Magic, deal when being forced to fight against weaponized nihilism? After all, Spider-Man is so upbeat, so cheery, and so positive. In fact, it's one of the big reasons that Dr. Doom actually chose him to become the new Champion of Magic and fight against the Scions. And yet, despite all his amazing work as a hero, Peter is ultimately human at the end of the day. In fact, this is probably the most human Peter has felt in a long time. He's not made of stone, he has understandable doubts, and if you cut him, he bleeds, and he bled a lot in this issue. Then, of course, we have CYRA, who is easily the most compelling of the Scions we've dealt with so far. She doesn't want to do her job, she wishes she didn't have to fight Spider-Man. Hell, she actively defends Spider-Man from the cheating Callus, and yet at the same time she is equally tortured because, well, wouldn't you be if you were the embodiment of impending death? If you knew that so little mattered in the cosmic scheme of things? Hell, this issue even brought back Master of Death Coulson in a rather interesting way. I wouldn't mind seeing more of him down the line. More than anything, though, what I really appreciate about this issue is that it's memorable. I'm actually going to remember this one several months from now. And what is at the end of the day a still pretty forgettable storyline like 8 Deaths having such a memorable moment, well, that's worth its weight in gold, which is why I give it a very positive 8 out of 10. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Jewel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Jewel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way, everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.